Arrowsmith Press. Ours is a small press named in honor of the great translator William Arrowsmith, who did exemplary work on the poetry of Eugenio Montale, as well as on the Greek and Latin classics, and who had been my senior colleague at Boston University, where I was the editor of the literary journal Agni. When I published a sequence of Arrowsmith's Montale translations, I followed what was then standard practice and appended the translator's name in small type at the end of his poems. Bill Arrowsmith reacted harshly by writing me an elegantly furious letter in which he pointed out that if it weren't for him, for his work as a translator, I'd never have the pleasure of knowing these poems. From then on, Agni began offering translators nearly equal billing alongside the original's authors. Anyway, Arrowsmith Press was born when my old friend Oksana Zabushko was invited to take part in Penn's International Festival back in 2005. Unfortunately, she had no work of prose to share with her fellow panelists. As I had already translated and published on Words Without Borders, a version of her long story Girls, I put that long story between covers and printed it in a limited edition of 150 copies. And so things began. Each of today's books had a different genesis. The first in this series was Helena Crux. I had the good fortune to attend a live reading Amelia Glazer organized for Helena and another marvelous poet whom Amelia is translating, Iya Kiva, at Harvard last summer. The poems Helena read were so powerful that I felt enormously lucky that Amelia offered to bring us a selection of Helena's poems. Not long after that, Olga Livshin, writing on behalf of her fellow translators, Andrew Janko, Maya Chabra, and Lev Friedman, proposed Lyuda Khersonska's chapbook, Today is a Different War. As soon as I read it, I knew I wanted to do it. Then, when two of America's leading poets, Carolyn Forche and Ilya Kaminsky, proposed editing a selection of contemporary Ukrainian poetry, well, how could I resist? They put together something quite original, which really doesn't resemble a traditional anthology at all. It has something of the coherence and urgency of a long poem composed by many voices, an Iliad for our time. Finally, I knew that Hannah Melnichuk-Stitsevich, who I'm proud to say is my sister, was responding to the war with a series of drawings using a style she'd been developing for her work on children's books, and which I found captivating and emotionally charged. And that rounds out the series here. And I just want to note that all the sort of profits and proceeds from the sale of Hannah's book will be donated to Ukrainian artists and arts organizations. So thanks so much. With that, I'd like to turn it back over to Russell.
Thank you, Askold. I hope we can return to the genesis of the books and the Q&A because I find it really fascinating how they all came together. Let me introduce Hannah Melnichuk. She received an MFA from the Massachusetts College of Art. Her work has appeared at Tufts Gallery, Danforth Museum, Art Space Maynard, Brush Gallery, Fountain Street Gallery, University of Massachusetts, Maloney Gallery, Piano Factory, New Art Center Gallery, and more. She has curated 2 art exhibits, Agni Magazine of Emerging Artists, published by Agni Press as Agni 37, Standing on the Verge, Emerging Poets and Artists Alongside Poetry, which was curated by Joseph Leese and Thomas Sayers Ellis. The other, a traveling exhibit of Ukrainian artists' works, which Askold just remarked upon, called Don't Close Your Eyes, responding to the current war. Hannah teaches drawing and 2D design at the University of Massachusetts Lowell, and I think she needs to share her screen. Let's welcome Hannah so she can talk about her book. I've seen a few shots of it so far, and I'm really interested to hear more. Please welcome Hannah Melnichuk.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you for that lovely introduction, Russell, and thank you to Russell, Natalia, the university, Arrowsmith Press, and all the other panelists. It's a real pleasure to be here with you, and I really look forward to hearing everybody read and talk about their work. I have just a little statement that I'll read about how this book came about, and then I will show some images from the book. My first response to the war was shock, disbelief. Like everyone, I think. I found myself praying, speaking with my family in Ukraine, and speaking with my deceased parents, watching the news, reading the papers. Early on in my conversation with my cousin in Ukraine, he said to me, "Please don't forget us." They felt it was going to be a long war and people would eventually close their eyes and move on. Feeling helplessness in the face of this horror, I reacted in the only way I knew. How? Drawings unfurled in a daily record of the events, responding to something I saw on the news, something or just something in my mind. These drawings are what kept me sane during the first months of the war. Each day I would go to my studio and draw. My studio was in my home. It was a release of emotions, and I did this out of need. I felt a little strange and selfish doing this since I thought I should be in Ukraine, helping instead of drawing. But the images continued to push their way onto the paper as if they needed to be exercised. Before the war, like Osgood said, I had been working on a children's book, a field that I started pursuing about 5 years ago. So when I turned to these new images, the method of drawing remained in that style. Quote, "These drawings bring to the fore the death and the horror of war through the filter of time and distance, expressing the emotions of one viewing the war from afar, depicting what can only be seen in the mind's eye." End of quote. And it was at this time I began to also follow Ukrainian artists on Instagram. The artists in Ukraine were making art, and I wondered what was their art looking, what did it look like? I found some very arresting and compelling images on Instagram, and soon I made a connection with the artist Halina Andrustenko from Kiev. And we arranged together and along with other people to bring 150 pieces of art that responded to the war. And the work was all on paper, and we're having a traveling show of all of these works. Now back to my own book. Last summer, after I showed Osgood my drawings, he asked me if I was interested in doing a book with these drawings. And of course I was interested. I wasn't sure if I would write about these drawings. They spoke for themselves. So we decided that I would supplement the drawings with quotes that had a dialogue with the work. This was a very interesting process for me. This book is dedicated to my parents who taught me to be Ukrainian in America, and to all the brave heroes who have laid down their lives for freedom for Ukraine, and to all the heroes of Ukraine. So the order of the drawings is not the order of the drawings that I will present is not chronological. Rather, it is how the image convey a story that feels somewhat chronological. I will be showing you some images from the beginning, middle, and end of the book, and I will be reading most of the quotes. So now I'm going to share my screen and hope this all works. Okay. Okay. Am I sharing my screen? Hold on. Am I sharing my screen yet? Can we see?
Not yet.
Yeah? How about now? Do we see this?
We did it just before we started and it worked. Zoom Masters, any idea what?
We did try this already. Yeah. So let me just try again. Give me a moment. I should be able to do this again. And let me move this over. Technology. Okay, here we go. This should work. Window and share. Excellent. Got that. Now we can see it, right?
Yeah.
Yay. Okay. All right. So the book is called Don't Close Your Eyes. And this is the cover. Freedom is the sure possession of those alone who have the courage to defend it. Pericles. Again, this book is dedicated to the memory of my parents, Olena Zayakevich Melnichuk, Edward Melnichuk, and to the heroes of Ukraine. Only the dead have seen the end of war. Plato. They expected us to be home by spring, but a surprise awaited them on the other end. Day 6. Close the sky. Take only what is most important, said Hejadam, translated by Wanda Phillips and Viliana Tkach. Day 28. You cry so much, mother, you don't stop sobbing. I can't see your face well, but faces don't matter much. Your hair, I still remember, smells of cornflowers. Katarina Kalitko, translated by Olena Jennings and Oksana Lutsishina. Day 37, this is called Dear Son. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Marcus Aurelius, Day 21. The horrors of Putin's war. When I die, tell the carpenters to take down the rafters and the ceiling. Oksana Zabushko. Translated by Askud Melnichuk and Michael M. Naidan. After the first death, there is no other. Dylan Thomas. Day 38 of Putin's war, the red line. His body, like a stone made of feathers, he felt it rise. Day 46. Yellow sunflowers filled her eyes. She held her breath, her body motionless. Day 31. Titles Hiding. Shaking the globe, Oksana believed she had the power to bring her father home. Day 13. Over 1,000 children have left Ukraine since the war started. Whose son are they burying today? Day 49. Grief. They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. And at the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. Lawrence Binion. Our senses restored, never to be the same, whisper to us. They existed. They existed. We can be and be better, for they existed. Maya Angelou. Here's the last image. I won't read the quote. I think that's, let me get out of here. So the only image that I wanted to say a little bit more about is the image of the mother that is writing a letter to her son. And the inspiration for that image, the sad inspiration was I was thinking, of the difficulty the mother would have, or everybody would have, but I wrote a letter to my daughter as if she were going to be fighting in the war. So there is a whole letter behind that image. I think that gives you a good idea of the work and some of the quotes, and that's not even half of the images. So thank you very much everybody.
Thank you, Hannah. I don't have a copy of the book yet. It looks like a beautiful book, and those are
Here it is.
moving images. I look forward to looking through it myself. So we are going to move on to our next book, which is A Crash Course in Molotov Cocktails. We have two presenters. Thank you, Asgold. The two presenters are Halina Kruk and Yulia Ilchuk, and I'm glad that Yulia was able to make it. It was a last-minute addition. At first she wasn't going to make it, and that all too important thing that Asgold was talking about, the translator's words, she gets to read them since she's one of the translators for the volume. Let me introduce, and I didn't mention this before, but when we're doing the readings, you will not hear the interpretation because we want to do this in the style of bilingual poetry readings. So you will, we certainly didn't want to ask our interpreters to interpret poetry on the spot. So we're going to do them sequentially. So the whoever's reading will read one language and then someone will read a different language. In most cases, we have one of each. And in some, we just have the English, and we'll just have the English versions because we don't have the poets here. So that's how we're going to proceed from now on. So Halina Kruk was born in 1974 in Lviv, Ukraine. She is the author of 5 books of poetry, a collection of short stories, and 4 children's books. She has garnered multiple awards for her writing, including the Bohdan Ihor Antonich Prize, the Hranoslav Award, the Smoloskyp Poetry Award prizes in 1997, the Step by Step Prize for children's books in 2003, the Polish Gaude Polonia Fellowship in 2003 and 2010, the Book Forum Best Book Award in 2021, and the Kovaliv Foundation Prize for Prose in 2022. Her work has been translated into over 30 languages, and she has translated from several languages into Ukrainian. She has recently collaborated on poetry/music projects with electronic musician Yurko Yefremov and the singer Halina Breslavets. She's served as vice president of the Ukrainian PEN, holds a PhD in Ukrainian literature, and is professor of European and Ukrainian Baroque literature at the Ivan Franko University, National University in Lviv. And I will also introduce Yulia, and then you guys can decide how you want to read your poems. I think probably first Ukrainian, then English first, and then each poem by turns would be the best. And then Yulia Ilchuk is assistant professor of Slavic literature and culture at Stanford University. She is the author of an award-winning book, Nikolai Gogol's Hybrid Performance, published by the University of Toronto Press in 2021, and a translator of contemporary Ukrainian poetry. Ilchuk's most recent book project, The Vanished: Memory, Temporality, Identity in Post-Euromaidan Ukraine, revisits collective memory and trauma, post-memory, remembrance, memorials, and reconciliation in Ukraine. Please welcome our poet and translator.
Галина, do you want to start with Ukrainian original? Ви хочете читати перші, правда?
Так, я дуже рада бачити всіх і
Yes, I'm very happy to see everyone, and I'm very happy to see my book being published at the publishing house of Aerosmith. And today I will read a number of verses in Ukrainian.
туди і назад. Туди їхала на заспокійливих, назад, на знеболювальних. Інших маршрутів не було. Чулася такою надщербленою, що боялася пробити собою обшивку літака, продуманий до дрібниць інтер'єр готелю, красиві тіла співрозмовників і співрозмовниць. Війна не пасує до решти світу, як каліцтво до вечірньої сукні. Надто важкий погляд, надто гостра мова, надто брутальні деталі. Закриємо очі смерті твоїми руками, Люба. Ти ж можеш, тобі там ближче. Для важких розмов у нас є спеціальна людина. У нас є спеціальна кімната, окремий вхід і вихід. Не тут, прошу. Красиві молоді тіла стрибають у води каналу, спраглі життя і кохання, залиті сонцем і сміхом, досконалі, зухвалі, як ті із німецьких довоєнних листівок, про здоровий дух у здоровому тілі. Довірні зерна без жодної вади, як ми колись певні себе, повні любові. Перед лицем смерті кажу тобі, люби мене так, ніби в світі, більше ніколи не буде достатньо світла, щоб ми віднайшлися. Люби мене, доки нам здається, що смерть закриває на це очі і не бачить. Але вона підглядає відтепер, завжди і всюди. Ми це знаємо, і в нас не виходить скінчити. Війна дбає про наше майбутнє. Так вони кажуть, так вони бачать. Коли ти дзвониш з війни, тебе перекрикують птахи. Отже, світ все ще існує.
I traveled there on tranquilizers, back on painkillers. There were no other routes. I felt so shattered, feared I peered the aircraft cabin. The hotel's interior was so intricately designed, the interlocutor's body so beautiful. What doesn't suit the rest of the world, like mutilation with an evening gown? The looks too heavy, the language too sharp, the details too brutal. Let's close death's eyes with your hands, dear. You can reach, you're closer there. You've got a special person for the hard conversations. You've got a special room. Separate entrance and exit. Not here, please. Beautiful young bodies dive into the canal's waters, sunlit, full of love, life, laughter, perfect, audacious, like German pre-war postcards, a healthy spirit in a healthy body. Carefully selected grains with no blemishes, as we once were sure of yourselves, love-filled. In the face of death, I say to you, love me as if there will never be enough light to find each other again. Love me until it seems death turned a blind eye. But she is spying from now on, always everywhere. We know it, we can't finish. The war's taking care of our future, as they say, as they see it. When you call from the war, birds are chirping, so the world still exists.
Зло любить, коли пам'ять людська коротка. Любить, коли ховають у власному саду поночі, щоб нікого не турбувати своєю втратою, щоб нікому не нагадувати, не витикати, не спричиняти незручностей. Щоб твоя втрата нікого не зачепила із тих, що ходили поряд і вижили. Щоб не нагадувала їм, чого коштувало вижити, щоб не випускала в них коріння сумніву, щоб не затьмарювала щастя тут і зараз, щоб нічого в них не відібрала, щоб нікого з них не торкалася. А вони ходять і торкаються наші втрати, нашими рисами нагадують, нашими безмовними мертвими нагадують. Ось у цьому місці, дитино, копай. У цьому глухому місці, яке не дає інших плодів, крім гіркоти.
Evil loves when humans' memory is short, loves when they're buried in their garden at night, so nobody's bothered by their loss, so nobody's reminded, so they don't stick out, so nobody's inconvenienced. So your loss doesn't irritate some passerby who stayed alive, so it doesn't remind them what it costs to survive, so it doesn't cause doubt to take root, so it casts no shadow on joy in the moment, so it doesn't rob them of anything, so it doesn't touch any of them. But they walk around and touch, and their features remind us of our loss, remind us of our speechless deed. Here in this place, my child, dig, in this God-forsaken place, which bears no fruit but bitterness.
Вона перепробувала це з вами всіма, але ніхто по правді не знав, як треба. Добра самарянка, поганий приклад. Слова до неї тепер приходять просто так, як Ісус біля криниці, просять напитися, дивують, заскакують, показують інший спосіб бути. В білих стінах її оселі хтось чистив гранат, ось криваві бризки, ось патьоки від крапель, нагадування про гріх. Поділися зі мною усім своїм, і я розповім тобі як. Дай мені напитися, і я скажу тобі як перестати. Добра самарянка, поганий приклад. Приходить до криниці наодинці, спрагла, з дірявим глеком, з бездонним глеком, зачерпує, проливає. Приходять до мене слова, просто так, без нагоди. Кажуть, ми тобі нічого не заподіємо, дай себе всю. Чистять гранат на білій одежі моїй, кривавлять, нічого чистого не залишається. Де ти, жінко, була? У цьому світі непевному, зрадливому, брудному, віддавалася кожному враженню, кожному болю, не могла сказати ні, зімкнути уст, стати супроти. Добра самарянка, поганий приклад. Приходять до мене, просять відвернутися, доки чинитимуть легке, викришуватимуть гранатові зерна, сіятимуть кров. Жінко, коли ти не в силах вдарити у відповідь, б'є джерело, б'є і б'є.
She tried it with all of you, but nobody could really do it right. The Good Samaritan's a bad example. Now words just come to her, the way they came to Jesus at the well, asking to be quenched. Words amaze her, surprise her, revealing another way of being. Between her white walls, somebody's spilling a pomegranate. These are the bloody squirts. These are the streaks from the drops, a remembrance of sin. Share with me all that's yours. I'll tell you how, let me drink, and I'll tell you how to stop. The Good Samaritan is a bad example. She comes to the well alone, thirsty, with a leaky jug, with a bottomless jug, scoops, spills. Now words just come to me for no reason, saying, we won't do anything to you, give us all you have. They clean the pomegranate on my white clothes, they bleed, nothing pure remains. Where were you, woman, in this uncertain, treacherous, dirty world? You indulge every impression, every pain. You couldn't say no, close your mouth, protest. The Good Samaritan is a bad example. They come to me, they ask me to turn away while they do evil, gnaw on pomegranate seeds, sow blood. Woman, when you no longer have the strength to fight back, the spring will pump, pump, and pump.
Точка біфуркації. У Львові часів війни, потім напишуть вони, було потужне літературне середовище. Напевно, вони щось видавали гуртом, як колись там Метуса, або збирались на літературні читання. Бо що ще можуть робити під час війни поети? Скільки тут їх опинилося нараз, внутрішньо переміщених і зовнішньо нестабільних, як колись ненадовго у Першу і Другу, проїздом в Європу, перш ніж залізна завіса розітне похитливе, оголене тіло модерного світу. Так, по-живому. Хоч тоді більше йшлося про Прагу і Подебради, Варшаву і Мюнхен, але й цього разу теж говоритимуть про Варшаву та Львів, Чернівці та Ужгород, Івано-Франківськ і Тернопіль, де стільки було їх нараз, тих поетів, що, здавалось, на кожному кроці можна було втрапити одне до одного в вірш, в тривожні сни, в історію, в новини, на одну підлогу зі спільним матрацом, під одну перехідну клаптикову ковдру, яка точна метафора людського співіснування часів війни, на жаль, вже зужита, в одну родину, надщерблену і неповну. І поясни комусь потім, що перші місяці Ми перетиналися лише випадково, винятково по справах на кілька хвилин, часом на вулиці, не відразу впізнавшись, сахаючись, ніби згадавши про щось безповоротно втрачене і більше недоступне, обіймаючись замість слів, щоб сховати набіглі сльози. Як ти? Як ти? Ні слова про літературу. Тримайся, тримайся. Мовчазні й зосереджені, як перші християни, що побачили чудо Христові на власні очі і ще не знають, як їх розуміти і як їх розказати іншим, щоб ті повірили і не кпили, як нічого не перекрутити і не наплутати. Бо ніколи не ясно, які деталі найважливіші, а якими можна знехтувати. В кожній розповіді потім ми розходилися із тим, що з нами сталося, як апостоли розходяться в різні кінці світу, проповідуючи кожен свою версію Євангелія. Бо всяка віра тримається на мільйонах особистих свідчень, на безлічі приватних історій, і з тої точки реальності, де ніхто нічого ще не знає і не розуміє, що зробив той чоловік біля померлого Лазаря, і як йому вдалося, як усі це бачили, але не всі увірували відразу. Особливо, якщо це віра у перемогу, із точки, в якій її ще нітрохи не видно. Так про це напишуть у відповідному розділі української літератури початку 20-х. Основне не забути потім, що все це було зовсім не про літературу.
In wartime Lviv, they'll write later, there was a strong literary milieu. Most likely they published as a group, like those modernists in Metusa, or gathered for readings, because what else would poets do in wartime? There were so many there, the internally displaced and the externally dysfunctional, like briefly during the First World War and the Second, on their way through Europe, before the Iron Curtain tore the modern walls voluptuous naked body wide open. Back then, it was more about Prague and Podebrady, Warsaw and Munich, but this time they'll talk about Warsaw and Lviv, Chernivtsi and Uzhhorod, Ivano-Frankivsk and Ternopil. Where there were so many of those poets, it seemed you couldn't take a step without winding up in each other's poem, in nightmares, in history, in the news, on the floor sharing mattress, under a single borrowed patchwork quilt. What a perfect metaphor for human coexistence in wartime. Too bad it's worn out. One family fractured and incomplete. Then explain to someone how in those first months we only crossed paths accidentally, for a few minutes, just on business, sometimes on the street, not acknowledging each other at first. Startling, as if recalling something hopelessly lost and irretrievable, hugging instead of words to hide streaming tears. How are you? How are you? Not a word about literature. Hang in there, hang in there. Silent and focused, like the first Christians who witnessed Christ's miracles with their own eyes and had no idea how to fathom it, and how to make others believe and to mock them, how not to twist or muddle things, because it's never clear which are the important details and which can be disregarded. Then in each account, we omit the parts about ourselves, like apostles on opposite ends of the world, each preaching our own version of the gospel, because any faith depends on a million eyewitness accounts, on countless private stories from the point in reality, where no one knows anything yet, or understands what the man did beside the dead Lazarus, and how he did it, how everyone saw, but not everyone immediately believed, especially if this faith in victory comes from a point not yet visible. This is how they'll describe the early 20s in the relevant chapters on Ukrainian literature. The main thing is not to forget that none of this was about literature.
And last one. У домі цьому ще тепле тіло вірша, висить на цвяшку буденності, зачеплене, заживе, як докір, як доказ, що я тут була, і ти тут був, і між нами було щось. Нестримне, як подих, непевне, як поцілунок, нікому неважливе, крім нас. Люблю в тобі можливість, якою ми не скористалися, дорогу, якою могли піти, але не пішли, вибір, якого не зробили, щоб отримати все відразу, замість чогось одного, захланні. Часом вірш стає домом, який зводиш за краєм прірви, виключно з потреби спростувати реальність.
In this house, the body of a poem, still warm, hands on the nail of the mundane, touched to its core, like a reproach, like proof that I was here and you were here, and there was something between us, irresistible as breathing, uncertain as a kiss, unimportant to anyone but us. I love in you the possibility which we haven't used up, the road which we could have walked but didn't, the choice which we didn't make, wanting it all at once instead of a little bit at a time. Sometimes a poem turns into a house that you build at the edge of an abyss, entirely out of a need to overcome reality.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's difficult to read when all the applause is silent. I know. If everyone wants to turn on their mic and applaud, that's of course fine. I don't know if it'll come across even more, but please. All right, so we're going to move on to our third book and two additional participants in today's event, Lyudmila Khersonska and Lev Friedman, and I will read both their bios and then I'll turn it over to them. Lyudmila Khersonska is a poet and translator from Odessa, Ukraine. She is the author of 4 poetry collections in Russian. In 2022, her joint volume with the poet Boris Khersonsky, her husband, came out in English translation from Lost Horse Press, titled The Country Where Everyone's Name is Fear. Khersonska was recently included in the list 33 international women writers who are bold for change by Words Without Borders. And Lev Friedman is a speech language pathologist based in New York City. He has facilitated translation projects and publications, and his own writing, translations, and reviews have appeared in various publications. He is co-editor of Quiet Spiders of the Hidden Soul, Mykola Nick Bajan's early experimental poetry, which was published in 2020 by Academic Studies Press. And I believe Lev wanted to give a little bit of a brief intro, not very long at all, and then we will proceed to the reading. Thanks.
Hi, very brief, and thank you for having us so much. This is the book. And almost all of these poems were originally published on Khersonska's Facebook page, where they were immediately read, commented on, and shared. And while she was often experiencing Facebook banning her, putting her in the corner for somewhat incendiary speech, the book is shaped by the immediacy of the ongoing war and of these poems, posted and processed by an international community. They had a huge impact on the translators, us, Olga Lipshin, Maya Chabra, and Andrew Janko, when they were first written. Each of us found something exquisitely painful or funny in each one. A year later, after the necessary time it takes to translate and publish in print, the war is still going on. And with it, the trauma, compassion, desire to help. Today is April 6th. Today is day 407, and today is a different war. and I turn it over to Ludmila.
Thank you very much, Lev. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for having me here. I'm very grateful to my translators for this book. Thank you very much again, Lev Friedman, Mike Chabra, Olga Levshin, and Andrew Janka. Lev described you how the book was born, and I'm also very grateful to Arrowsmith Press for publishing it. So today we decided to read some of the poems from this book. I will do them in the language they were originally written in. It's in Russian. This is my mother tongue. Война, день 6. Враг хочет нас уничтожить. Прямо сейчас, с утра. Это уже понятно было вчера. Утром сегодня холодно, как бывает войной, точнее зимой приморской, подветренной стороной. Скучно вот так, навечно замереть от врага, скучно слушать сирены, стоишь, не имеет нога, взгляд устремлен в далекое. Сбудется ли когда? Летят ракеты российские на красивые города. Кто-то падает навзничь, останется в небо смотреть. Высокое что-то рушится, укорачивается на треть. Груда обломков, груда боли моей живой. Враг хочет нас уничтожить, собачий сиренный вой. Кошки и те завыли, ветер завыл в трубе. Война — это куча пыли, горе в твоей избе, смерть у твоей калитки, школьный металлолом. Враг хочет нас уничтожить, взрывается аэродром, площадка детская, школа, больница, почта, киоск. Все стратегически важное, что давит вражеский мозг. Все взрывается мирное, даже спальный мешок. Враг хочет нас уничтожить. Точка. Тире. Шок.
The enemy aims to destroy us right now, this morning. It's understood. It was understood yesterday. This morning it is cold. The war season has started, or more precisely, the shore in winter, the windward side. It's so boring when the enemy freezes you solid forever. Boring to listen to sirens, standing, your foot falling asleep, gazing into the distance. Will it ever happen? Russian rockets falling into beautiful towns. Someone falls prone. We'll lie there and watch the sky. Something tall is crumbling, 2/3 left standing. A heap of shards, a heap of my living pain. The enemy wants to destroy us. Dogs howl and sirens howl. Even the cats wail. The wind howls in the chimney. War is a pile of dust. Sorrow in your shack. Death at your gate. Scrap metal in your yard. The enemy wants to destroy us. Explosions, an airfield, a playground, a school, a hospital, a newspaper stand. All strategically important to the enemy. It weighs on his brain. All that is peaceful explodes, even a sleeping bag. The enemy wants to destroy us. Dot, dash, shock.
Thank you, Lev. Хуже всего, когда война застает человека с авоськой. Когда он возвращается из магазина. В авоське бутылка молока и буханка хлеба, а война смеется. Купил бы соль, мыло и спички. А человек спрашивает, да зачем же мне соль и спички? А война отвечает, за тем, что еще пригодится.
The worst is when war catches a man. The worst is when war catches a man with a string shopping bag, when he's on his way back from the store. In his bag, there's a bottle of milk and a loaf of bread. And war laughs, should have bought salt, soap, and matches. And the man asks, what do I need salt and matches for? And war answers, because it'll come in handy later.
Как хорошо гулять в невоенном мире. Стоит или не стоит брать фарфоровый чайник, где пересесть, купить билеты на поезд, гости, улыбки, люди, шелковые туристки, леди в инвалидной коляске, уступите дорогу, вежливые полицейские, высокие официанты. Не выставляйте на ночь мусор, его потрошат чайки, маски, маскерину, сеньоры. Не подходите к борту, Он говорит со сцены, если бы российская ракета уничтожила статую Давида, я бы сразу умер. Или церковь Санта-Мария-Маджоре, я бы тоже умер. Разве можно умереть 2 раза? Где-то всегда не жалко, а где-то жалко. Война – это неудобно для прогулки, салата, наряда, нехорошо для туристов или министра культуры. Министр возвращается с работы на велосипеде, он доедет до дома, его не убьют по дороге российские солдаты, для которых убивать развлечения. В некоторых странах, например, запрещено убивать, разрушать жилые дома и до смерти пугать животных. Эти запреты не действуют в странах, предназначенных не для туризма, а для захвата. Там живут люди, которых не жалко. И там нет статуи Давида, чтобы все умерли за нее, если варвар ее разрушит.
How nice to take a walk in the warless world. Is this China teapot worth buying? Where to change trains? Where to buy tickets? Guests, smiles, people, obedient tourists. Lady in a wheelchair coming through, make way. Polite police officers, tall waiters. Don't put the garbage out at night. Seagulls will get it. Masks, mascherina, signore. Stay back from the rail. He says off stage, if a Russian missile destroyed the statue of David, I would die instantly. Or the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore. I would die again, like you could die twice. Some places never matter, some places do. War, it's inconvenient for a walk, a salad, an outfit. Bad for tourists or the Minister of Culture. The minister bicycles back from work. He will make it home. He won't be killed on the way by Russian soldiers for whom killing is a bit of fun. In some countries, such as this one, killing is banned, as is destroying homes and scaring animals to death. These bans do not apply in countries meant to be taken over, not toured. There are people living there who don't matter, and no David for the whole world to die for if the barbarian destroys it.
Когда я буду такая, как мама, такая же красивая, молодая, мне исполнится 90 лет, я захочу на день рождения французские духи Сальвадор Дали и губную помаду цвета чили. Чили пишется с маленькой буквы, это цвет, а не страна на берегу океана. Раньше писали на почтовых открытках «Желаю тебе море счастья и океан любви». Никого не захлестнули волны, ни того, ни другого. У мамы добрая улыбка и гладкая девичья кожа. У меня тоже будет такая, когда мне исполнится 90.
When I'm just like my mom. When I'm just like my mom, just as pretty and young, I'll be 90 years old. For my birthday, I'll want a bottle of French perfume called Salvador Dali and chili-colored lipstick. Chile is a color, spelled with a lowercase letter, not Chile, the country by the sea. In the past, they wrote on postcards, I wish you a sea of happiness and oceans of love, neither this nor that for any of us. My mom has a kind smile and a girl's soft skin. I'll have that too when I turn 90 years old.
Что нового? Смотрят, как на зверят. В зоопарке. Показывают пальцами. Говорят. Снимают на камеру. Вот тут страдают они. Вот тут без воды и света проводят дни. Тут хоронят близких, там заходят в подвал. Здесь прилетает даже тем, кто не воевал. А это страдает мирняк. Слово какое мирняк, собирательное, безликое, как на клумбе сорняк, как что-то нечеловеческое, что можно сжечь, убивать, пугать, обстреливать, спать мирняку не давать. Что нового? Смотрят, как страдают люди в моей стране, до этого мирной, ныне с пришедшей извне, войной, измученной сиренами, суетой. Смотрят, как они выживают. Любопытствующий взгляд пустой. Кому-то жалко, кому-то не жалко вообще. Кто-то думает по делам, думает о борще, ложится спать, у него не стреляют, у него тишина за окном. Его пока не бомбит плешивый ранимый гном. Его черед не настал, он в зрительские ряды записан, он воевали деды. Он честный, не высовывающийся, Крым наш. Он потенциально слово новое, карандаш. Его детей не снимают на камеру, как уезжали с котом под мышкой. Думали вернуться потом. Его дети не плакали, не боялись улиц своих. Что нового? Что захочет кремлевский псих?
What's new? Gawking at them like baby animals at the zoo, pointing their fingers, talking, taking videos. Look, that's where they suffer. Right there, they spend their days without light and water. Here, They bury their loved ones. There they go down to the basement. Over here they get theirs from the skies. Even those who never served. The non-combatants suffer. What a word, non-combatants. Pickable, faceless, like weeds in a plot. Like something not quite human that you can burn, kill, frighten, shoot at, steal their sleep. But what's new? The people watch, people in my country suffer. It used to be peaceful. Now with war that came from outside, worn down by air raid sirens, by worry, observing how those people survive, a prurient, empty glance. Someone is sorry, another isn't sorry at all. Someone is thinking about things, about soup on the stove. He goes to sleep, it's quiet outside his window. For now, he's not being bombed by a balding, vulnerable garden gnome. His turn hasn't come yet. He's on the spectator list. He's our fathers fought. He's honest, doesn't poke his head out. Crimea is ours. He's potentially, new word, a matchstick. His children weren't photographed as they were leaving, holding their cat, thinking they would come back. His kids weren't crying, weren't afraid of their own streets. So what's new? Whatever the Kremlin psycho desires.
Война, день 13. Куда ты едешь? Куда они все? Куда? Асфальтовая дорога, ледяная слюда, большие и малые женщины, чемоданы, дети, тюки, машины, автобусы, грузовики. Это чей кот? Чей? Это мой кот. Мой обхватить руками, мой дрожащий живот. Страх живет в животе, а потом в подвале живет. И все же, чей это кот? Кто здесь вообще чей? Или все люди ничьи, как из раздавленного муравейника муравьи? Какой-то двуногий прошел, раздавил ногой, испуганный вопросительный взгляд ногой. Вопросительный знак, ногой испуганный знак. Как же так? Убивать? За что? Как это так? Почему сегодня? Разве уже не убивали вчера? Что это за чудовищная игра? Гибридная война. Синий интернетовский кит. Вылез из виртуальности. Кто-то будет убит, кто-то останется жить, кто-то с забытым ртом. Никогда не расскажет, что с ним случилось потом.
Where are you driving off to? All of them going, but where? An asphalt road like icy mica. Women, the young and grown, suitcases, children, sacks, cars, buses, trucks. Whose cat is this? Whose? It's my cat, mine. To put my arms around my quivering belly. First, fear lives in your belly, then in basements. But still, really, whose cat? Who is still anyone else's here? Or maybe they're all nobodies, like ants from a crushed anthill. Some two-legged creature walked by, trampled it with his feet. A question mark, stripped down, scared at punctuation. Kill? For what? What the hell for? Again, today? Didn't they already just do it yesterday? What is this monstrous game? Hybrid war, a blue internet whale that came up from the virtual world. Someone will die. Someone will be left to live. Someone with a forgotten mouth will live, but never tell what happened.
Thank you very much, Lev.
Thanks to you both. We are going to move on to our final book, which is In the Hour of War. And we have 4 contributors from the book here with us. Carolyn Forche has published 5 books of poems, most recently In the Lateness of the World, a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize in 2021. Her works also include translations, anthologies, and a memoir. She is a professor at Georgetown University. Ilya Kaminsky was born in Odessa, Ukraine, and now lives in the United States. He is the author of 2 poetry collections, Dancing in Odessa and The Deaf Republic. His works also include translations, essays, and anthologies. He is a professor at Princeton University. And then Oksana Maksimchuk is the author of poetry collections Zenya and Lovi in Ukrainian. Her English language poems have appeared in Agni, the Irish Times, the Paris Review, the Poetry Review, and many other journals. She co-edited Words for War, New Poems from Ukraine, an award-winning anthology of contemporary Ukrainian war poetry. And then Lyuba Yakimchuk who is an award-winning Ukrainian poet, born in 1985 in Pervomaisk, Luhansk region, and currently resides in Kyiv, Ukraine. She's the author of several full-length poetry collections, including Apricots of Donbass, which sheds light on people's experiences in war-torn regions. She has earned several prestigious awards, including the International Slavic Poetry Award. The book, Apricots of Donbass, was listed in Forbes magazine, Ukraine's top 10 books about the war, and published in Ukrainian, English, Polish, and Estonian. It will be published in French and Swedish coming soon. Lyuba's poetry has received international acclaim and been translated into over 20 languages. Leading media outlets such as the New York Times, BBC, CBC, and CNN have covered her works. In 2021, she performed her poetry at the Grammys as part of John Legend's free performance, which was dedicated to Ukraine. In addition, she was named among the 100 most influential people in the arts in Ukraine by Kyiv's New Time magazine in 2015. And I'm going to turn it over to you four, and you're going to orchestrate this, because I realize that you probably did a little bit more of the organization beforehand. And if you're trying to talk, oh, there you go, Carolyn.
We didn't really organize beforehand, but we're happy to do it extemporaneously now. Thank you all for being here. It's an honor to be with all of you. And I'll just open with how this anthology came about. In the 9th or so week of the war, we had the idea to compile an anthology of Ukrainian poetry and translation for Arrowsmith in order to bring Ukrainian poetry to a larger audience, but also to help touch the hearts of people in the United States, to contribute in some way to strengthening their desire and resolve to provide the so necessary support to victory in this war. The anthology, as Askold said earlier, is not arranged typically with poets in order of birth or surname, but rather so as to collect the various poems into one poem to tell a very urgent story, beginning with the alphabet and ending with poets and all others writing for their people a future. And so I think perhaps Russell might call on us each in our turn to read from this anthology. That might make sense.
I'm happy to do that. I understand that you and Ilya are reading English poems, and that then we have a combo with Oksana and Lyuba. I believe that's the way it appears to have turned out. So why don't we go ahead and why don't you read the poem that you planned to read, Carolyn, and then we'll go to the mix, and then we'll go to Ilya reading the English poems that he picked out for the last two. I think 2 each. Is that what you picked? I believe. How does that sound? Is that okay with everybody? Carolyn, you just froze. Oh, are you back? There.
I am back. I was suddenly, when you called my name, it was decided by the internet to disappear me. So I'm going to read 2 short poems. One is Forgive Me, Ludmila Krushanska by Ludmila. It is a poem that is translated by Grace Mahoney. Its title is In a Country Where Everyone's Name is Fear. In a country where everyone's name is fear, it's good that you don't see a thing and don't hear a thing. Say to anyone, not a thing. Slip nothing into your bra. Keep nothing in your pocket. In both ears, nothing. In 2 eyes, nothing. Blind feet, no looking back, no looking back. If you look back, my brave, if my brave, you look back, my brave, you say nothing. When you arrive to a new destination, they will learn nothing from you. They will learn what nothing is. And the second one is by Serhiy Zhadan, and it is translated by Virlana Tsak and Wanda Phipps. It is Take Only What Is Most Important. Take only what is most important. Take the letters. Take only what you can carry. Take the icons and the embroidery. Take the silver. Take the wooden crucifix and the golden replicas. Take some bread, the vegetables from the garden, then leave. We will never return again. We will never see our city again. Take the letters, all of them. Take every last piece of bad news. We will never see our corner store again. We will never drink from that dry well again. We will never see familiar faces again. We are refugees. We'll run all night. We'll run past fields and sunflowers. We'll run from dogs, rest with cats. We'll scoop up water with our bare hands, sit waiting in camps, annoying the dragons of war. You will not return, and friends will never come back. There will be no smoky kitchens, no usual jobs. There will be no dreamy lights in sleepy towns, no green valleys, no suburban wastelands. The sun will be a smudge on the window of a cheap train, rushing past cholera pits covered with lime. There will be blood on women's heels, tired guards on borderlands covered with snow, a postman with empty bags shot down, a priest with a hapless smile hung by his ribs. The quiet of a cemetery, the noise of a command post, and unedited lists of the dead, so long that there won't be enough time to check them for your own name.
Yes, I think that was actually one of Hannah's drawings. It was a caption, take only what you need. Yes. So let's move on to Luba and Oksana. Luba, would you like to read the English, sorry, the Ukrainian version, and then Oksana read the English?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here, actually, in this event. Thank you for having us, and greetings from Ukraine. Actually, I'm in a central part of Ukraine right now, in Poltava region, where my parents moved in after they escaped from occupied Luhansk region. And here you can see wallpaper I wrote about in the preface of my book, Apricots of Donbass. This wallpaper is the same as the ones in our house in Luhansk region, which is currently occupied. And my first poem I'm going to read a poem about my this town, my town, town of my childhood. This is funeral services. Траурні послуги. Цей терорист схожий на кущик. Він на вітрі тремтить і втрачає останній листок, але з носа йде пара, він дихає. Це недолік для того, хто хоче бути як кущик. Цей терорист удає з себе сніг, він пухнастий і білий, але тепла шкіра недолік для тих, хто прикидається снігом. Цей терорист схожий на дівчину гарну, і вона мені посміхається. Вона сподівається, що схочу її цілувати, може навіть і дослідити її тероризм, якось зовсім безпосередньо. Але я люблю хлопців, тому в неї теж є недолік. Цей терорист їде у катафалку із написом «Траурні послуги». І це правда, його послуги траурні, і він сам не радіє із того. Він лежить у труні, дуже зблід, наче мрець, став холодним, як сніг. Він не дихає, як кущик. Навіть серце навчив зупинятися на блокпосту. Навіть серце навчив зупинятися. І зупинився випадково назавжди. Цей терорист ідеальний, якщо повірити, що це не людина, а лише терорист. And Oksana Maximchuk's translation, I believe. Hi, Oksana.
Funeral services. This terrace looks like a bush. He trembles in the wind and sheds his leaves, but breath escapes from his mouth. That's quite a disadvantage for someone who wants to be a bush. This terrace looks like snow. He is soft and white, but warm skin is a disadvantage for someone trying to look like snow. This terrorist looks like a pretty girl. She smiles at me. She hopes to entice me to kiss her, to seduce me into her terrorism through carnal knowledge. She is also at a disadvantage. I prefer boys. This terrorist is riding in a hearse with a sign mortuary services. And it's true, his services are ghoulish. He himself doesn't enjoy the business. He lies in his coffin, pale as a corpse, cold as snow, breathless as a bush. He is so perfect, he has trained his heart to stop at will at a checkpoint and accidentally stopped it forever. He'd be so perfect if you could only convince yourself that he is just a terrorist, not a human being.
And the next poem is reading you. This is «Коли вона скінчилась». Їжте хліб із зерна, що під небом росло, прошитим ракетами. Ось тут риба і мідії, які плавали в море одному з воєнними кораблями. Ось вино врожаю 2022-го. Виноград цей підв'язували під час обстрілів, поки руки нашим невинним зв'язували вороги. Поряд бігають діти, які росли без електрики, виростали в сирих укриттях висоток та шкіл. І не треба цих пафосних фраз, що діти – це квіти, бо кімнатні рослини загинули вечорами зимовими, без тепла, без світла, без догляду. Наші ж діти навчились рости під бетоном на глибині, навчилися жити в коридорах і ваннах. Як скінчилась вона, ми зібрались на вулицях, розповідали одне одному, як то жити було Україні, яку ракетили й дронили, як то жити було Україні безелектричній, безводній, повертатися у магазин тричі, щоб застати час без тривог, приходити в перукарню двічі, другий раз, щоб достригтися, коли дали електрику. Як то жити було лише вірою, що ворогів уб'ємо до одного, а кожного з друзів обіймемо. Ми зібрались та пили терпке вино, часом озиралися та гукали дітей, щоб не відходили надто далеко. Особливо
When the war ended. Feast on the bread made from the grain that grew under the sky riddled with rockets. Here for you are mussels and fish that shared a sea with the military ships. Here is wine harvested in 2022, vines tied up, trellised under artillery fire, while the enemy tied up our innocence. And these children running around, they've been raised without electricity in damn bomb shelters of high rises and schools. Do not speak in cliches like children are our flowers, for the houseplants had all died in the winter nights, with no heat, no light, and no care, while these children were learning to grow in the hallways and bathtubs, under the concrete, in the depths. When it was over, we gathered in the streets and exchanged stories of what it was like to live in a country rocketed and droned, to live in a country unelectrified, waterless, to return to the store twice, thrice, to catch a time when there is no air raid, to return to a hairdresser for a haircut that could not be completed during a sudden blackout. What it was like surviving only on hope that one day we'd be rid of the enemy and embrace each of our friends. Thus we gathered and drank the tart bitter wine, keeping an eye on the children so that they wouldn't wander off into a grove that might explode.
Sorry, you dropped out there just for a minute, Luban. I didn't hear the beginning of the last one, so I wasn't sure what you had said. You just said that that was the last one. Thank you for telling us. That was a beautiful reading, and I find it a little bit hard to talk after these things. So I don't think I'm the only one. Let us go to Ilya to close out this in the hour of the war and in the hour of war anthology with a couple of poems in Ilya, please.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you, Russell, and everyone at Indiana University. And thank you, Ascald, and everyone at Aerosmith Press, which is such a terrific, truly international press, something that we don't have enough of in the United States. Thank you for poets from Ukraine who are here with us today, despite God knows many obstacles. Thank you, Carolyn, who's a great poet in her own right, and who has put so much time and energy in promoting poetry from Ukraine ever since the full-scale invasion has begun. I'm going to read two poets. I'm posting the poems in Ukrainian and in English in the chat simply because I speak with an accent in both languages, as a matter of fact. So hopefully you'll be able to follow. The first poem is by a poet from Bucha, Lysyuk Panesyuk. Lysyuk's family had to escape Bucha when the city was occupied. And when he came back, along with his neighbors, he found many horrific things that you might have seen on TV. But he also found things like explosion devices, tiny ones inside children's slippers. So that is the reality out of which this poem was written. It's a recent poem. In the hospital rooms of my country, letters of the alphabet go toward, clinging to one another, standing up for mere words no one wants to shout. Sentences that are blown up by the minds in the avenue, stories shared by multiple rocket launches. A Ukrainian word is ambushed. Though the broken windows of the letter D, other countries watch how the letter I loses its head, how the roof of the letter M falls through. The language in a time of war can be understood. Inside this sentence, the whole, no one wants to die, no one speaks. But the hospital bed of the letter E lies for prosthesis it is too shy to use. You can see the light through the clumsily sewn up holes of the letter F. The soft sign had its tongue torn out due to disagreements regarding the etymology of torture. There is too much alphabet in the hospital rooms of my country, too much alphabet. No place to stick an apostrophe. Paint falls off the walls, covering us with words incomprehensible, like man who in wartime refused to speak. Okay. And let me just copy and paste in the chat the second poem. It's a longer poem, so I'll just use it in English in the chat, otherwise it just will flood my connection. And let me tell you a little bit more about the poet. But the poem in English is in the chat for you. So Dmitry Bliznuk, both of these poets, I have chosen to read them because the book brings together some poets who are internationally known who read the stadiums and rightly known, the brilliant poets. But I wanted to, at least for this meeting, to give a spotlight to poets you may not have heard about. And Dmitry Bliznyuk may be one of those poets. He has lived in the city of Kharkiv all through the war, through the horrific bombardment. I have seen videos of his plays. I have seen him read poems. He wrote this poem in the middle of bombardment. This begins with a line, take immortality, God, but give me this cold apple cellar, because that's where he was hiding. Okay, so here is a poem by Dmitry Bliznyuk from Kharkov. Take immortality, God, but give me this cold April cellar. Take souls and other toys, but let us live. Not Adam and not Eve, not your sons, my sons' life. Wet hole in a cellar with wooden floor is a promised land. But no, we need cement floors and the smell of cats and mattresses and a bunch of stolen blankets. The city bases roost, so they poke us with missiles, needlework. Watch, a mad tailor makes of a city a headless costume without hands. This is your human being, God, and not a retail display mannequin. The future is a door of mud glass, the color of raw diamond. This door opens inside my chest every moment. Each breath in is a breath out, sometimes faster, sometimes not at all. In a time of war, the future jumps out like a frog. No, grasshopper, 1 second, and there is nothing. No future, just emptiness, pulsating. In a peacetime, the epoch stars off in measured strokes, but now the Matisse of a Kremlin gremlin chew on us, and our land is decorated with bloodied fragments of cement walls. I see a soldier's heart diving in snow after my neighbor Miss Valia. The murderers are lit from inside by the saliva of their sick ideas. I see them 12 miles off. As those jump like pebbles on the ice, the breath turns into white seaweed. We are holding hands with the night hungry like an animal sniffs at balconies, eyes waiting. Is anyone out here alive? The walls of this town are tossed out of the ground with their roots. The staircases are torn up like unfinished poems. The body on the asphalt is a black rat slipping back. Is that a person? I don't know. Is that a person? The evening jumps. We have no place on this earth, you and I, God. But you can drown in the sea of blood, sea free of people. Watch these centipedes of tongues crawling on their mechanical knees won't swallow this street, that street, this street. Thank you.
Thank you, Ilya. I have no words. Thank you. But I do have a suggestion. Instead of any Q&A, we are right up against our time limit. Instead of doing any Q&A, we have Oksana, you mentioned in the chat, Oksana is also a poet, not just a translator of poetry. I would like to ask you to, I know you brought some additional poems that were part of the anthology, I think, and you wanted to read them. So can you do 2? And that will close us out. And that will be just a few more poems, 2 more poems, and then we'll be finished for the day, if that's okay with everybody. I know some people have to leave, but let's do that. Okay? Okay with you, Oksana?
Thanks so much for this. I think I'm just going to read one translation that went into the anthology by the Ukrainian soldier poet Boris Homenyuk, and I've mentioned it in the conversation with the amazing editors. In so many ways, the anthology that we put together that was published in 2017 and that Ilya wrote an introduction for was inspired by Carolyn's work. So it's been magical to be part of this team and to collaborate on this new project that's quite different. As the editors were saying, it's like this one choral poem that's bringing together different diverse voices. So before, when I was planning this reading, I looked at Boris's Facebook page, and I know that he is fighting in Bakhmut, so he is in great danger. It's not clear that he is alive, actually, but there has been no confirmed news of that he has died. I did read an interview with him that he gave in February, where he said that he doesn't expect to come out alive out of this war, but he is also 60, so, or close to 60. So he thought it's a very good choice, a bargain that he is striking with God, that he's done everything that he wanted to do in his life, and he is ready to bring it to completion in this way. So this is a poem that he wrote, I think, in 2015, because he has been fighting consistently since the invasion first started in 2014. And this is the one that's represented in the hour of war. When you clean your weapon. When you clean your weapon, when time and again you clean your weapon, when you rub strong smelling oils into your weapon and shield it from the rain with your own body, when you swaddle it like a baby, even though you've never swaddled a baby before, you're only 19, no baby, no wife. The weapon becomes your only kin. You and the weapon are one. When you dig trench after trench, when you dig this precious, this hateful earth by handfuls, every other handful reaches your soul. You grind this earth between your teeth. You never will have another. You climb into the earth like into a womb. You are warm and snug. You've never felt this close to anyone before. You and earth are one. When you shoot, even when it's night and you don't see the enemy's face, even when night hides the enemy from you and you from the enemy, and embraces each of you as her own, you smell like gunpowder. Your hands, face, hair, clothing, shoes, no matter how much you wash them, smell of gunpowder. They smell of war. You smell of war. You and war are one. Thank you.
Thank you, Oksana, for that moving reading. Thank you, everyone else, all of our participants, all of our readers. Thank you, Askold, for helping put this together. I hope you have a good launch for the books. I'm sure it will be, which is next month. We'll look forward to that. And would you like to say anything more about that, Askold, before we?
Oh, just if you happen to be in the Boston area on May 6th at Brookline Booksmith, a number of the poets, translators, I know that Ilya and Carolyn and maybe Lev will be there. reading Ludmila's poems and Helena's poems. And please join us. And if you can't make it to Boston, we will also be reading at the Shevchenko Scientific Society at Enteshe on May 13th with many of the same readers and a few of the other translators who weren't able to make it to Boston. So either way, please do join us. Please check the Arrowsmith website for details. Russell, thank you so very much for this really astonishing way to spend Maundy Thursday. Thank you. All of you poets who brought us together, all of you translators who were the bridges to now. Thank you. And to the artists, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Really, Russell, it was amazing, and yeah, Ludmila, thank you. I think Helena Kruk just disappeared, but really, I'm going to sit here for a while in silence.
Too. I sort of felt like let's not do the Q&A. Let's just sit in silence.
That was absolutely a brilliant call.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks, Russell. I'll see you.
Thank you, Oskar.
Bye.
Natalia, bye-bye.
Bye, Natalia.
Thank you. Hi, Bronya.